My favorite DC character is Martian Manhunter.
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to watch him sort of navigate the world as a person from somewhere else who's trying to indoctrinate himself into a culture that doesn't understand him, and he can't really share his culture with other people because everybody from where he's from has been destroyed. He's very alone, and I'm sure making a trip like that has to be really hard and really painful, and watching him go through that really speaks to me.
Wow, dude, that's deep. It's really deep.
Yeah, so I hate immigrants.
Oh,
Yeah,
come
I
the
don't
fuck
like it.
on,
I don't
man.
like it when you're not from here.
Come on.
Like when you're from somewhere else, yuck.
Dude.
I do not like that when you're from somewhere else.
So I've been running into this peculiarity as of late, where I keep happening upon nerds who are, well, they're fascists. They are racist, homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic, ableist fascists. They support fascist ideologies, they vote for fascist parties in government, they rock fascist paraphernalia, which I will address later. But to sum it all up, these people are fascists, and I find it paradoxical in nature because everything nerds seem to be about should be antithetical to fascism. We like shows about rebellion, right? We root for the plucky young upstarts who want to overthrow the dictators, right? We don't get literal genocidal Nazis tattooed on us, right? Right? Well, much to my chagrin, it just isn't that simple. Many nerdy spaces in the last decades have been inundated with misogyny, racism, homophobia, and a myriad of other isms. Women don't feel safe going into GameStop. Black people don't feel safe cosplaying, and many people don't feel safe in their own comment sections. Well, I intend on exploring that question and expounding upon what I find. So take a long walk off of a short pier with me while I explain how nerds became everything they hate, or nerds, fascists who can't fight. Before I get into this, I need to talk to you about today's sponsor. Nobody. I don't have a sponsor. Please join my Patreon. It's $2. I'll put the link in the thingy. Thank you. Love you. Bye. So what is fascism? By definition, fascism is a governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism, according to dictionary.com. Fascism today looks like blaming immigrants for the economic crisis and then rounding them up and caging them, suppressing people who speak out in opposition to the government via deplatforming or deportation, consistent violent and racist rhetoric targeted at certain groups of people, and constant propaganda. These are all things that most sci-fi and fantasy actively warns about and combats. The Borg from Star Trek, Galactic Empire from Star Wars, Principality of Xeon from Gundam, and Fire Nation from Avatar: The Last Airbender are all fascistic in nature, and they are all unambiguously the bad guys. Some people may disagree about the Xeon part, but they are wrong, and I will explain why in a bit. But to bring it all back, we as nerds consume a lot of anti-fascist media, but concurrently, a lot of those nerds seem to be virulently pro-fascist. But how? How does this happen? How does a community of people who root for rebellion on TV become so pro-fascist in ideology and in praxis? Well, the answer is a bit unflattering, to say the least. So the word nerd has three definitions from Merriam-Webster that I want to focus on. 1. A person devoted to intellectual, academic, or technical pursuits or interests. 2. A person preoccupied with or devoted to a particular activity or field of interest. 3. An unstylish or socially awkward person. So, the three definitions of nerd are some dude, and I mean that gender neutrally, who's smart. Some dude who is really into something, and some dude who's just kind of corny. The first definition, and to some degree the other two, tend to be how nerds are represented to us in pop culture. Your Pidges and Steve Urkels, if you will. The issue is that the studious nature simply isn't a requirement to be a nerd. You just need to be really into stuff and bad at color coordination and you're in. We often forget that when considering nerds, so the space is full of people who don't read, don't look things up, miss the plot, came up in a horrible school system, and aren't politically aligned with much of the left-leaning messages of our shared media, who look and talk like we do. We all got picked on, we all think Trunks is cool, but some of us are pro-MAGA and don't think women should vote. It's not that nerds became stupid, it's that many of them always were, and we forgot that, or never considered it. I never considered people who were anti-empire in their fandoms would be pro-empire right at home. And that aforementioned stupidity is key to these contradictions. There are people who are watching these shows, listening to these bands, as this issue also includes music, and watch these movies who have no idea what the fuck is going on. A great example of this is the Gundam fandom. Now, for those of you who don't know what Gundam is, for the purposes of this example, all you need to know is that people in space are at war with people on Earth. The people in space wanted independence, but wanted it peacefully. Then a dictator took over, a space colony was dropped on Australia, millions of people died, and the dictator declared the Principality of Zeon would wipe Earth out, despite the fact that Earth was going to agree to their terms pre-genocide. Meaning the murders were evil for evil's sake. Just recently, I made a post talking about the Principality of Zeon from Gundam being the bad guys, and a bunch of people flooded my comments saying that Zeon wasn't the bad guy, and that the robots looked cool, and I lost my shit. Largely because Zeon is very clearly Nazi. It's not hyperbole. They have stormtroopers, which is a type of Nazi soldier. The main bad guy calls his son Hitler at one point in the show. This is again not hyperbole. They were running around yelling Sieg Zeon to each other. The Nazis were Nazis, and for some ungodly reason, a chunk of the fan base didn't know, or worse, they didn't care because Zeon's robots looked cool. Even the redeemable Zeon guy ended up being a eugenicist who wanted to destroy Earth to force humans to evolve into super people called new types that had precognitive abilities and laid them to restart the human race. Literal Ubermensch shit. And they didn't care. The big robot go burr. People even tried to argue that because Zeon was multiracial, that they couldn't be Nazis, as if the Axis powers of World War II weren't multiracial and multi-ethnic. Still Nazis, or at least Nazi sympathizers. And again, so many fans didn't know this. They watched a show whose run lasted for decades and had no idea what was happening. The same can be said of Star Wars fans who get stormtrooper tattoos and love the Empire aesthetically, who are again Nazis. I was talking about the Empire in a different video I made, where a bunch of people argued that stormtroopers weren't Nazis and that Star Wars isn't woke, like I was trying to make it. Yeah, that's right. I did. I made Star Wars work. Not the rebellion, not the fighting the fascist regime. No, I did it. It was all me. I made the Ewoks trans to rot the minds of the children. Now, no, but really, people are buying fascist plushies and mugs, and now we have a generation of weirdos whose favorite franchise is about rebellion, but whose favorite characters are genocidal slave traders and their militia of Gestapo. And there is something to be said of Disney selling Nazi merch, but I don't have the time, and other YouTubers said it already. The point is, there is an ever-growing number of people who have no media literacy skills or literacy in general, who are watching shows with left-leaning ideologies, who are incapable and uninterested in interfacing with the ideals head-on, and only watch for the carnage and boobs. And the boobs bring us to our next point. So we have a bunch of people, mostly men, who don't read, research, know any history, and have no interest in any sort of academic pursuit. But what I failed to mention is that a lot of these guys are losers. They are uncool, corny losers. I know this because I'm one of them. These are guys who got picked on, beaten up, robbed, wedgied, noogied, etc. And going through that is horrific. It's utterly horrific. I say this again as a guy who had to physically fight his way out of being bullied. It sucks. And for a lot of dudes, like 15-year-old me, watching anime was my escape. Lord of the Rings was my getaway. My dreams were full of escaping to far-off lands to live in the worlds of my favorite anime characters. I wanted to get isekai'd so badly, and I was not alone. A lot of kids like me had similar dreams. Our media was our escape, and that escapism is what led to a lot of what we're seeing now.
Imagine, if you will, a 15-year-old boy who gets picked on. And after a long day of getting bullied at school, that kid comes home and turns on TV and starts watching Toonami and Dragon Ball Z is on. And this kid is using anime to escape. He's watching this show secretly hoping that he could be a Saiyan too. That he could power up and shake a continent with his ki. That he could use the Kamehameha on his bullies, his school, the whole town. Now imagine if that kid, after weeks, does nothing but engage in this power fantasy and has easy access to a gun. Lives in an open carry state and gets the wrong idea about how he should wield power from what he's watching. This kid isn't learning about forgiveness, discipline, and believing in yourself, which are all things Dragon Ball Z has in its writing. He isn't incorporating the lessons of mercy and how harming people creates a cycle of violence that could have long-lasting effects. This kid sees people stronger than him beating people they don't like to a pulp. You throw Andrew Tate into that mix while showing a kid like that anime with fan service, half-naked girls, constant moaning, and no strong, autonomous female characters who have arcs that don't involve being damsels and chasing after a man, and you have built an incel. Fascism preys on kids like this. Fascism turns desperate boys into monsters that don't see women, the LGBTQ, or anyone different from them as people. And then this country gives those boys bullets to play with. Those boys grow up and turn into men, voters, pundits, or worse. Fascism galvanizes the most desperate of us on power fantasy and leads many of us into voting our neighbors' rights away. Its charismatic leaders offer nerds like the kid in my hypothetical an enemy to point their rage at, and they often pick minorities. They often pick women. The unfortunate truth is that even some of the most left-leaning shows and movies still have gaps. They still struggle with diversity. They still struggle to write compelling women with autonomy or people of different races that don't lean on stereotypes. And in a culture that trends towards devaluing people, watching media that reinforces these ideas while not having any sort of media literacy, while your literal president and his ilk is telling you to deport people who don't look like you and mistreat women, is all a recipe for disaster. This is the recipe for an incel. And we have seen this play out again and again. This is how we get our comment section trolls, our edgelords, our incels, and our school shooters. They are all symptomatic of the same disease. They want to be the bullies. They don't want things to get better. They just don't want to be on the bottom. And they will trample you just for a hit of dopamine. The sad truth is, nerds have always been this way. Shirtgate, Halo lobbies, game stores, and other events and spaces that have shown us time and time again that a lot of nerds simply aren't safe people. We constantly have to remind people that cosplay is not consent, that calling people slurs is bad, and that having a body pillow of a 14-year-old girl in a school uniform when you are 38 is gross, and that gay people aren't evil. Time and time again, we are shown that people who love One Piece, if given the chance, would worship a celestial dragon. These guys are just as oppressive as the Galra Empire. They just happen to also be a bunch of losers.
That's why Elon Musk, a guy who doesn't invent anything and can't put a sentence together, is touted as a genius in these spaces. Because he's a loser too. He epitomizes what they think power looks like. Having access to women and capital. Nerds, not all, but enough that it warrants conversation, are often just as bad ideologically as the people who bully them. They are just as racist, misogynistic, vile, and cruel as their detractors and tormentors. They just can't fight. I mentioned earlier that I was like this. I got bullied. I engaged in power fantasy. I wanted to get back at my bullies. But something changed when I was about 15. I joined a club. I made friends. I met people who were different from me. I learned about other lives, other people's families, other people's beliefs, and their ideals. I gained confidence. I became more sure of myself. I started fighting. I don't recommend it, but that's what I did. I started showering. That I do recommend. I highly recommend that. I became kinder. And honestly, that's where it started. I became kinder, and being kinder allowed me to build a better life for myself. But today, we have people on the internet telling these people that empathy is a weakness, that it's made up, that it's dangerous. People get hurt because of stuff like that. Nerds are radicalizing into the galactic empire they swore up and down they would revolt against. They aren't reading, they aren't fact-checking. They are running headlong into evil because the evil is offering them community and superiority. That obsession with power is making them the worst version of themselves. And I frankly have no idea what to do about it. I don't know what it takes to change their minds. They aren't happy. No matter how many immigrants we deport or women they harass, they aren't getting jobs or girlfriends. Nothing is changing, and they are still like this. I want to meet these losers with a degree of understanding, but at 31, I'm finding it harder and harder to feel bad for them as they become more violent and vitriolic. Like, dude, I'm sorry you got bullied, but getting a wedgie in the 5th grade should not make you a racist now. So, I have to enjoy my nerdy hobbies at home, where nobody calls me racial slurs for having disagreements about Spider-Man. And for the foreseeable future, that's how it's going to be.
Hey, yo, real quick, I just wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I wouldn't be able to do this without you. You are the reason for the season. And it is unseasonably warm here in Chicago. I'm going to do my best to enjoy this weather before I go to this next shoot. I have a video shoot. But I just wanted to take some time out in real time to thank you. So, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Bye.